So welcome to the 2025 Village of Gurnee State of the Village. I always want to say State of the Union, but it's a State of the Village, and I'm Mayor Tom Hood. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to be mayor of this town, to be able to tonight to reflect on all the things that we've done together in this past year in 2024. It's a great opportunity. I'd like to first open in a short prayer. If you'd pray with me. Just God, I just thank you for the opportunity to be here in the village of Gurnee, to have these great people, great residents that you've blessed us with. Pray that you give us wisdom and guidance in the year ahead. Amen. So it was in 1967 that I first saw the village of Gurnee from my child's eyes. I was 7 years old, and my parents had just moved in across the street from a farm that would become Gurnee Mills. And it was a great opportunity to see the farms and the rolling hills and things so different than they are today. And in that time, as a young child, I got to play in the places that we now know as Menards and the Rorman Auto Mall. Those are the places that have replaced those rolling hills. And I don't regret it for a moment, and the changes that have occurred. And fast forward to me graduating from law school and coming home to start a business right here in the village of Gurnee. Things had changed. Six Flags had come, and Gurnee had begun to grow. The opportunities that I've been given here in town to be able to have my son join my firm, to be able to have my other son purchase a business right here in town, to have my mom live here, it's a dream come true in a lot of ways. My story is important tonight, not for the story itself, but a story of what I like to see other people in the village of Gurnee have the opportunity to do. Our name and our slogan, Community of Opportunity, is said for a reason. And that is that we'd have an opportunity to live in neighborhoods like the one I grew up in. That where I raised my boys, my wife Pam, to be able to be in a setting that I really enjoyed. We enjoyed our neighbors, and as I go around the village of Gurnee today, I see that replicated, and I'm thankful that that's happened. And also just the business opportunities that all of us have to be able to do that right here in the village of Gurnee. We don't have to travel to Chicago necessarily to be able to work. And there's just some blessings that I think that we just pass on because we don't realize that because we've grown up here or that we've spent a lot of time here and we take it for granted. And I just want to be thankful for that. So tonight's really an opportunity to take a breath because normally once January hits, and this is for me personally, it's another year. I play a game with myself at my law firm that I start at zero and start to accumulate dollars and think about, the big bad dash, right? To get to the end. And I just forget about the past year and I move on to the next one. And I don't want to do that with the village of Gurnee because so many good things have happened in 2024. So many people's lives have occurred. So many things that within staff or the employees that they've accomplished deserve to be recognized. And tonight, through the State of the Village, I hope that we are able to have that opportunity to take a breath and say, that was really awesome. We're blessed because, when you take a look around the country and even in Lake County, other villages don't have what we have necessarily. We don't have, we have things that, whether it's financial or whether it's our neighborhoods, whether it's the staff or the employees, when you really take a look down deep, we have just a special place in which we live that I want to be thankful for. And that's, if you remember anything from tonight, I think that's the one thing I want you to take away from, because you'll hear a lot of things that'll come, a lot of numbers and a lot of things more objectively. I can say all day long, this is a wonderful place to live. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, what do you have to show for that? I have my own personal experience. But I think that you'll see once you see some of the numbers and some of the testimonies that you'll hear tonight, that we do have a great place to live. However, before I get too far into this, and there's plenty of superlatives that I will offer for how great Village of Gurnee is, I do know that there are people in 2024 that was the worst year of their life. Probably my mom would count in there where she lost her husband. And I know that throughout the Village of Gurnee that's true. So in the back of my mind, when I talk about how great it is, I do recognize that some people say, not so great. But we as a village will do our very best to make it as great as possible, and knowing that we'll all go through hard times and difficult times, whether we do it individually or even as a village. And it hasn't been all that long since we've experienced hard times. 2021 isn't all that far away. COVID was a word that seemed to be used every other sentence, and thank God it's not being used every other sentence. Civil unrest was something that happened in 2020. These are all things that happened in a short amount of time, things that we had to deal with as a village and individually, something that we had to face. And there's no guarantee that next year or 2025 won't bring the very same thing over again, maybe just a little different flavor. And it's important. We have to be ready, and that's something I'll talk about tonight. The village is ready, that we're ready as we can be in terms of whether it's financially or whether how we staff our police department or our fire department or public works, we're ready. And that's what we owe to our residents. When you ask us to do a job, myself and the village board and staff get together, we make sure that we do the very best to look into the future and see how we can best prepare for it. We are in a service business, so tonight, even though, again, you'll hear numbers, the bottom line is it's a people business, right? It's like people we work with day in, day out. It's not number crunching necessarily. It's necessary, but at the end of the day, when I interact with residents, when staff interacts with residents, when the police department, the fire department, it's person to person. And we never lose sight of that, because the people that we have here in the village are top-notch. They recognize, and they have people skills that are able to interact with the residents in such a way that they know that they count. And that's something that the phrase that I'd like to use, and I'll reference back to, is safe, strong, together. That's really, as a village, what I strive for, what I look to see that we already have and look to continue to have. That if we're not safe, then we really don't have anything else, right? We could have the most awesome business department and most awesome businesses, but if we're not safe, it just doesn't mean a whole lot. Strong can mean a lot of things, but at the end of the day, when you're strong financially and strong with relationships, that carries it a long way when we stretch through or go through hard times. And finally, together. In speaking tonight, it's not lost on me that it's something that we all do together. It's not me, it's not just the board, it's not just village administrator Mutes, it's not just one person or a couple people, right? It's all of us. Everybody brings something to the table, and we need it, right? It's not like, as you sit here today and every resident has that's part of this community, we need what you have. And we want to do our best in reaching out to the residents to draw that out of people. And that, I think, is a good village. And you can choose to be a part of it or not. When I was raising my boys, me being part of the village was raising my boys. And it wasn't being part of the village board, it wasn't being mayor, it wasn't doing any of those other things, and that's okay. And as I've grown older and I have grandchildren, my time demands are a little different, usually, right? But in any event, it's like everybody plays their part. So just a couple numbers to start with. The village of Gurnee has a little over 30,000 residents. We have more than 1,200 businesses. We're located on a little bit over 13 square miles. We have a budget that's about $100 million. It's complicated. There's lots of moving parts. There's many people that play a role in how that is successfully done. And sometimes it's shocking, right? It's like, well, we're just kind of a small town. Not so much. We have, the last number that you need to hear is that we have 23 million visitors. And we can actually prove it now that we have 23 million visitors. We always guessed. But in any event, when we have those folks come through town, we deserve the very best. They deserve the very best. So for us, there's a commitment to that. Before I launch into any more details, I really would like to provide a foundation of how this all works. As evidenced by my prayer, just that everything begins and ends with God. And second is family, is that each of us have family, and that's who we depend on for our central core And all the residents in town are great, and I call them my extended family. But at the end of the day, it's our family that we depend on, and that's important, and it needs to come in that order: God, family, and then residents. The other thing that I really enjoy with having been here for so long is understanding the history of the village of Gurnee. We're coming up on our 100th anniversary. Actually, 2028 will be the 100th anniversary of the village of Gurnee. And there's many people that I've had the honor to know from being a small boy all the way up. That I've had an opportunity to know Gordon Gillings, who was the mayor of Cheryl Ross, was her dad, and just the opportunity to get to know him as a small boy. He was a mayor of the village of Gurnee for 24 years. Dick Welton, the man that's responsible for much of what we see, that I knew, he appointed me to the zoning board. So I have had relationships with people to know that there's a foundation that's been established, and the things that you look at today is not just happenstance, right? There's a lot of thought and a lot of planning that's gone into what's happened here in the village. I'd also want to pay special attention to the village board. The village board, these past 4 years for me, and just looking at this past year, there's a group of individuals that are experienced, they care, they have individual talents that they bring to the table that are so important, that we work well together. And I so appreciate that. And I should change the slide so you get to see them. I won't go through each one of them. I'm going to make special mention of just one. Jeannie Balmas has served as a trustee for 24 years. So if we could just give her a clap for just the service she's provided. These trustees and Andy Harris as clerk, they serve hard. They take it serious. That as I see them study their packets and go out into the village, they do a great job, and I'm thankful for each one of them. Also, the Civil Service and the Planning and Zoning Board do a great job as well. They provide a service to the community that's often hidden. Planning and Zoning Board maybe not as much. Maybe they get more attention in certain circumstances, but they dedicate their time as well, and I appreciate that. Next is staff, and I've already mentioned that there's just a lot of staff that just are really good at doing their job. And something that I've noticed as I've traveled through the ranks, as I'd call it, when I was on the zoning board, and then I was a trustee, and when I became mayor. When I became mayor, I started to work with many of the staff more day to day. And the closer I got, the better they became. Just as I saw their work ethic, how they cared, just the conversations they had, they really want to see the best for Gurnee. It's not just a job, which I didn't know. Is it just a job for you? And what I found is that generally it's not. That they really are dedicated to making sure that we have the very best in the village. We also have the legislators that really serve us well. Rita Mayfield's a state rep, and so is Joyce Mason. Adrian Johnson is a senator, state senator, and Brad Snyder is the congressman that among those individuals I spend the most amount of time with. And I just would want to draw your attention to Rita Mayfield. She has been willing and has championed the legislation with reference to ETO. And for those that don't know about ETO, it's a cancer-causing gas that unfortunately we have a business in town that emits that. And there's been over the last several years legislation that has cut that back, thankfully. But in any event, I have asked Rita Mayfield to submit a bill to the House in which there'd be fence line testing done so that we'd really know exactly what's being emitted. Currently there is testing and finding out what's going on at Vantage, and they really cooperate well with us, but you can never be too careful, and it's something that I appreciate that State Representative Mayfield has been willing to do. And when the bill does come out into the House of Representatives, I'll be asking for your support for that bill. Also with reference to Lake County, there's many ways in which Lake County provides assistance to us that just goes almost unnoticed. I mean, roads that Lake County provides and takes care of throughout town are all over the place. Sometimes there's some confusion with that. The Village of Gurnee does not take care of Route 132 or Washington Street, and there's many roads that Lake County provides services for, or the state of Illinois provides services for. And Lake County has really provided us a lot of great support. Carissa Caspon is a board rep for us, and she does a great job for us, and Sandy Hart does. She's the county board chairman. And in particular, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's a 911 consolidation that's ongoing that's really valuable to us as a village, and both of them have been great advocates for that to occur. And when I talk about that, it really means something to each one of us in terms of how fast emergency services reach our door. There's also just the partners that we have up close and personal. Warren Township, Elmer Fallis is the current supervisor there, and they provide great services, especially to our seniors and to other people that are in need. I'll also be talking a little bit more about that in terms of partnering with them in a more real way than we have in the past. They do a great job with them, and if you've been over to the senior center and talked to some of the seniors, you'll know that they really enjoy the services that Warren Township provides. Next is the Gurnee Park District, and I'll embarrass Susie Carabella. Susie's there, right? Susie is the executive director for the Gurnee Park District. They have done an absolutely awesome job, and I think all of us would testify to that as we go through town and you go to any of our parks. They're up to date. They do awesome in terms of providing great variety. Craig sitting next to her is really a key person in how that all works, and so responsive. And Susie happens to be retiring in April, is that correct? After 27 years. So if we could just give her a round of applause for her service. That's just a great example of a partner that we, when we do events or when we do things out in the community, either we're leading the way as the village, and oftentimes it's the Park District leading the way. Gurnee Days is a good example of that, is that they've just done a great job of putting that all together and providing the residents with a lot of well-needed, I just would say just enjoyment. I think that's probably what I'd say at the end of the day. And they just do a great job of what they do. Then there's the Warren Newport Library with Ryan Livergood and his board, again providing opportunities that we have. It's Warren Newport, so it's not the Gurnee Library, but it feels like the Gurnee Library to me since it's right here in town. And they do a great job of having different events and providing services that many of us probably don't know the full extent of. So I'd really invite you to go on out to a library to see what they have to offer. It's not the traditional old library that maybe you thought of that when you were a kid growing up. And finally, with reference to the school districts, I would just say that with the different school districts, 50, 56, and 121, is that we have a really good partnership with them. And when I get to the police section of what I have to talk about tonight, that's probably one of the strongest areas in which we have a relationship with them. Without good schooling, that our village would be not such a great place to live, right? And we had those discussions, when referendums come up, and it's a difficult balancing act, right? Trying to figure out how are we going to afford the real estate taxes, as we bear the burden, since schools are 80% of our real estate tax bill. And then at the same time, how do we do a good job of educating our children? Isn't that what we really want to do, is to see them have the very best? Why should they have less? And each of our school districts has done an awesome job, to me, in educating and providing the opportunities that I would hope that they would have. And me having gone through Woodland and Warren, I could testify that they did a great job, right? So, but in any event, it was just, it was a good experience for me. I know that not everybody has great experiences in school, but I think that Woodland and District 56 and Warren do a great job. And finally, the Gurnee Chamber of Commerce that we partner with, they really have stepped up to the plate, have provided a lot of opportunities for businesses to get to know each other. And I just appreciate Len Grandstrom and the board for all that they've done in providing those opportunities. So what I want to do is I want to start tonight to go further into economic development, mostly because that's an area in which provides the fuel for which the village runs on. And if our economy and if our businesses do poorly, We are a village that are sorely in need of having our businesses provide tax, because we don't have a real estate tax that we levy as a part of our village. Now someone says, well, my tax bill's really high, so how does that work, right? Well, the way it works is that when you look at other villages, and in fact 97% of all the other villages in the state of Illinois levy a property tax against their residents, and that's necessary from their perspective. We happen to have an excellent business community that generates sales tax and other taxes that allow us to, for 24 years, not have a tax that we have to levy against our residents. 24 years, that happened right when you did, Jeannie. You were first on, right? First year. But in any event, it's what I'd say is elastic. So when I mean elastic, that means that from year to year, there's no guarantee that that tax will be the same. Now, when you receive real estate tax, it's largely the same year over year, so it's pretty easy to plan. But when we do our planning, and I'll give my hat off to our finance director, Brian Gosnell, who does great planning, great projections for us, which allows us to see into the future a bit to say we need to plan. We need to have a significant reserve, which we do. We have 70%, 65% is what we've set as the limits for us. And that's something we really need to have, because there's no guarantee that we won't have another COVID. COVID shut down Six Flags for a whole year, and it cost us $2 million in taxes. So if it went on year after year after year, where would we be? So there's things that we have to plan for in case that does happen. I'll spend a little time with economic development, and I would just say that in our community there's tension with economic development. We're not a wide open space that has a lot of farmland that we can just plunk businesses down anywhere we want. We have to think about who's nearby. And therefore, it's one thing to put a business in town that generates a lot of revenue, but if it really damages the residents nearby, then have we really done the right thing? So that's always going to be the tension for us as a village board, and we've experienced some of that, actually a lot of that in the last couple of years, where we're trying to make hard decisions and saying revenue is important, or the needs of people are important and they need to be addressed, and where is it going to be placed? So as a village board, that's something that we've struggled with, but I think that in the end, when the Planning and Zoning Board sets us up with good research and providing a public hearing setting, and then it comes to us, I think we've come up with some good results. So as a village, we also try to be business friendly, and that's always a high balance. Community development will take a look at exactly what should be happening, right? Giving out permits, making sure that life safety issues are addressed. We need to have safe buildings, but at the same time, we don't need to put up every imaginable stop sign for a business in town so they don't want to be here. So we have to figure out how to juggle that. So we have our inspectors who seem to want to find everything wrong with your building and business, right? And then we have Dave Ziegler, who is our community development director, who tries to walk that fine line to figure out how can we let the businesses do what they need to do, but at the same time be aware of life safety. We just can't have anybody hurt in our businesses. So another thing we do is small business grants. Oh, I already got there. Let's see. So you're changing them for me. In reference to grants that we give to businesses, it's something that we do as a partnership. That we have businesses come and apply to us, and they'll come and they'll say that they're going to do a project, and we would be willing to go halfway with them to be able to provide a portion of the funds for that project. And they apply to us, and there's a number of requirements that they have. So those are the things that we have to do. We also have business awards where we recognize, and that's who we see up here, various awards that we gave out this past year. Gurnee Donuts. Unfortunately, they know me really well at Gurnee Donuts. So, and Bringing Me Home Award, just a place in which they are, I think virtually everybody knows Gurnee Donuts. And Tacos El Norte, the Paying It Forward, just the testimonies that we receive with reference to the things that they have done in town. And a lot of times behind the scenes, you don't hear about it. And finally is the Special Needs Champion, is that we started just this year, that Jewel won that award. And that's just, as you go through town, that's important. And we wanted to draw these out of the businesses, that they would step up and be recognized for the things that they do behind the scenes. And it's not that they're looking for awards, but they deserve to be recognized. We also do ribbon cuttings along with the Gurnee Chamber of Commerce. We have Tom's Tours, things that we are involved in terms of just visiting each of the individual businesses. And you can see on the bottom, I just would mention Gurnee Garden Center. I believe this is their 50th year. That's Jerry and his wife Shirley. And they've been awesome on the east side on Grand Avenue. Every year, year in and year out, they provide flowers to us, and I appreciate that for their sticking to it. So the distinction I want to make, just as a side comment, is that the village is not the business, right? Is that sometimes there'll be people that'll come to me, and I'll say this once, and it's happened, if it doesn't happen 5 times a year, it probably happens a little less, is that people ask me, could you please put in a Trader Joe's? Okay, that's what they want. And every year they ask for that. And it's like, well, believe it or not, I'm not in charge of Trader Joe's, but I can tell you that Economic Development Director Ellen Dean bothers them on a regular basis and says, what do we need to do to make you come to town? And we'll do that with a variety of businesses, is that we know that there's certain businesses that residents would like to see, and we'll ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. And in some cases, we're successful at doing that, and other times, not so much. But at the end of the day, we're not the business, right? They come to us, and it's up to us to provide the structure for them to be successful. It's not for us to determine whether they're here, what corner they pick. We're not a private landowner. And sometimes I think residents expect us to govern it a little more than we do. There's a lot of freedom in this country, last time I checked, and the government's supposed to do their job. And from my perspective, it's capitalism, right? And comments like, we have too many mattress stores in town, or I'm sick and tired of those chicken stores. It's like, apparently they're not. Apparently they're okay with being in town, and if there's 4 places that have chicken, well, that's just the way it is. So what I'd like to do is, recognizing, okay. So doing the top performing business. This is something that was enjoyable for me, and I always thought that our businesses in town were successful, right? Is that unless they left and you had a vacant building, you just thought they're doing well. But I didn't know how successful they were in the nation. So I'll skip over Gurnee Mills for right now, but just looking at some of the other places up here, is that as an example, and that's not even a number that's up there, Six Flags Great America is there in Six Flags around the country, they're #1 in average attendance. Now they're careful to say is that they're not #1 in total attendance because they're not open year round. But for the days in which they're open, they have the highest attendance. They also have the best record in terms of profitability in the entire Six Flags chain. So when people comment back to me and say, are they gonna last? Are they gonna be here still? Absolutely. Six Flags has a lot of stayability. They're putting in rides. The last year and this year, I can't pronounce the ride they're putting in this year, or I would say it. A Swiss company is installing that right now as we speak. So that's really an indicator to me that they're willing to invest a lot of money into a place that they expect people to come and visit. And with the amount of attendance they're receiving, that's amazing. So just as you look up there, I won't go through every one, but at the end of the day, it's like our Denny's is #1 out of 41 in the state of Illinois. Who would have thought, right? So as you look through, it's amazing what some of our stores, whether it's restaurants or retail stores, what they do, even nationally. Steak and Shake, 1 out of 56. So it's like, it's just fun to know, fun to see, but it's good for us, right? It's good for our revenue, for our village itself. And just a compliment to our residents that actually frequent the different places that we have. Obviously, there's visitors that come as well, but we know that our residents frequent the businesses that are in town. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a moment to talk about Gurnee Mills. As you know, I grew up across the street from that farm that you guys planted your mall on. So my dad hated that, so just to let you know. But I was okay with it. It was okay. And that happened in the early 90s. So Gurnee Mills since then has today it's not the same mills that we knew back in the early 90s. And I'm in a lot of ways thankful. There's been a change, and I think that there's been a misconception that I really wanted to address, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight Gurnee Mills not only tonight, but when you see the video that's going to come later, a little bit later, is that Gurnee Mills is thriving. It's not what you read in the newspaper where it says, well, Amazon's taken over and every mall in the country is going to fail. Well, absolutely, absolutely not true. That in fact that the Mills has thrived, that the inside the mall, and I won't have these, I'm looking over here at Randy and Kelsey, who are the main management of Gurnee Mills, but they have over 95% occupancy. You're not going to tell me no, right? That's good. 95% occupancy. The Ring Road, which I would probably, I'll say a few words and you'll know how long things have been vacant. So the Saturn dealership is now occupied. So how long ago can you remember a Saturn driving on the car? Well, a little while ago. And the same thing is true for Toys R Us. Well, Toys R Us has been gone for a while, and we're thankful that that has now been occupied by Texas Roadhouse, which is opening February 3rd, I believe, so it's right around the corner. And Ashley Furniture is right behind it. So those are, and when you go around the rest of the Ring Road, the Baker Square has been knocked down, and there's Bank of America that's going up in its place. That hasn't quite had the same positive effect that I've had. Texas Roadhouse has had a much better response than Bank of America. But Dane, you'll forgive me for the bank. Dane's the president of Gurnee Community Bank, so he has an affinity for banks, right, Dane? So banks are good. And in any event, it's a good opportunity for us to see growth. And I'd like to just call up Randy Evertowski, the general manager, and Kelsey Castellajon. I just said it wrong. Castellajon. I have to always pronounce that wrong. Is that we have this new award that we want to give out. That it's a Pinnacle Performance Award, which Gurnee Mills is at the pinnacle, and to me has just done an awesome job. They're a great partner with us, that there's times in which we interact in terms of bringing different people into the mall, and they have just been over and above cooperative. Obviously, our police department has the opportunity to work with their security staff, and that's really been great. And they have a dog out there these days that seems to be a really cool dog. So overall, it's just been really enjoyable for me, enjoyable for staff to be able to have the management there at Gurnee Mills. But I just would say that the revenue that it generates and the amount of people and visitors it brings to town is second to none because I'll give you one other number with the revenue that's generated from Gurnee Mills, and that anchors a $1 billion revenue on Grand Avenue. So it's not just that they're a pretty face in Gurnee Mills, but they attract a lot of other things in town. So I just want to congratulate you on winning the Pinnacle Award, our first ever. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Malls are no longer just retail centers, but rather they have to be entertainment-oriented as well as dining-oriented, and that's what the mall has done. Gurnee Mills has become much more than just a place to go for outlet shopping.
Gurnee Mills is part of Simon Property Group, the largest retail real estate company in the country, and we have over 200 stores here at Gurnee Mills, and Simon is always investing and innovating in Gurnee Mills, and Village of Gurnee is an outstanding partner for Gurnee Mills.
Gurnee Mills is a really big deal to the Village of Gurnee. It generates approximately $6 million of revenue to the village every year. It has more than 200 stores, provides a lot of opportunity for our residents as well as for the visitors. There's more than 17 million visitors that come here every year, not to mention the fact that it also anchors our Grand Avenue corridor, which where more than $1 billion of sales are generated every year.
reason why Gurnee Mills is so special to me is I'm a resident here at Gurnee. Visiting with Santa and taking those photos with Santa, walking the mall and seeing the families shop and all the bags in the hands and just the hustle and bustle, and it's family friendly and it's great to play at the play area and see all the families happy and enjoying their time here at Gurnee Mills.
There you guys go. As a person that
From the early 1960s, when my family moved across the street from Gurnee Mills, it was a big farm. And never did I ever imagine that there'd be a huge mall placed here. So to me, the changes here that have come for me personally has been gigantic.
Gurnee Mills has a full lineup of events taking place throughout our holiday season, and Santa's going to be here until Christmas Eve, and we're excited for him to be here. We're going to host Caring Santa for our special needs families out there. We're going to have lots of holiday performances down at our stage, and we're also going to be hosting a menorah lighting toward the end of December.
I think I'm most proud of just the way the village of Gurnee can work seamlessly with the mall management here at Gurnee Mills. I can't say enough about the Gurnee Mills management. We both work towards something that we both enjoy for the mall as well as for the village.
Gurnee Mills is obviously a large center, and security is always important to us, and we're thrilled to have our canine here, Jax. Canine Jax joined our team just over a year ago, and he is not just an extension of our security team, but also for our management team. He's here for comfort, he's here for safety, and we're really enjoying him on our squad.
Gurnee Mills is vibrant and alive, and I'm excited for what the future holds for it. That's something the village wanted to do, is invest in our partners that we have looking for a video for Six Flags and also for Great Wolf to be able to provide an opportunity for not only within our community but outside to see all the great things that we have to offer. So just to come from my office and administration, I think I've already alluded to a number of these things, but probably for me, just something that doesn't get talked about very much is just the water that we have, the water we receive from Lake Michigan, the water that comes from a 4 trillion gallon body of water that if you were in anywhere else other than in the Midwest, it'd be an issue for you, right? It'd be important. Around the world, people talk about where are we going to get our water next, and that's not a comment that really comes up here in town or really along Lake Michigan. And I'm thankful for what Public Works does. Brett's a key man in terms of how our water gets to our houses. And JAWA, I'm a board commissioner that sits on that board that makes sure that the water we receive is high quality water, something that actually Dick Walton was part of the original JAWA commission in terms of making sure that the village of Gurnee was well served. And it's not a sexy thing to talk about sometimes, but it's really something that's important to a village. I want to just go right to the quality of life and talk a little bit about that. In terms of talking about numbers, there isn't a, let's see, connecting and celebrating. So what oftentimes happens is that it's not something, if you can't put a number to it, then is it really something that could have really happened, or did it happen? And the quality of life is one of those things, right? How do you judge the quality of life in a village? And to me, it's done person by person. And this year, I've been given the opportunity this past year to be part of many block parties where I was able to get to go out and visit with people in their own neighborhoods. And along with Matt, to be able to set up these block parties and to provide a $500 benefit so that they'd be able to use that towards whether it's food or whatever else they need for their neighborhood. And we hope to see a lot more this year. And to me, that's a way, one by one, you get to talk to people and see their enjoyment, because in a lot of ways, COVID robbed our children, robbed our neighborhoods of the opportunity to meet with each other, and it seems like we've had to go down the road of learning our social skills all over again. And in some ways, it's just easier to stay inside. That I think most of us are introverts. I think there's a few exceptions to that. But I think at the end of the day, most of us would probably find it easier not to interact with your neighbors. But as you get out there and talk with them and block parties and other things, I think you'll find that it's just really enjoyable. And I found that when I was out there, people were recounting block parties they had decades ago, things where they knew their neighbors. And that's something that when Pam and I raised our boys, that our boys played in the neighborhood and we knew our neighbors, and that's something that I would hope that our neighborhoods would be able to experience afresh again. There's also just many of the events that we do, and when I talked about the Park District, that we partner with them, whether it's Bonfire and Brew, Holiday Train, Welton Plaza, Christmas tree lighting, Gurnee Days. I mean, so many events that we just try to virtually just stuff our calendar full of events, and my phrase that I like to use is more, more, more. And I think that's just there. I don't think we can have too many events. Maybe we could, but so far we haven't reached our limit, I don't think, because as I go out, there's just a lot of families with their children just experiencing a good time. And whether it's Bonfire and Brews, where you go out for a date night and there's 400 or 500 people that are having a good time, you know, having a brew along with some live music and sitting around a bonfire, or Gurnee Days that are perennial favorite, where we have our parades and music and all those other good things. It's really a great opportunity to share life and to see some quality of life. And like I said, I can't quantify that, but I can just tell you my own personal experience, and hopefully many of you and people experience the same thing, that I got to know my neighbors, that I just didn't drive in, put my garage door down and turn on my TV. Rather, I went and saw my neighbor next door, or we had a potluck, whatever that would be. So then beyond that, there's a couple other things that I want to mention specifically, was recognizing and honoring those among us. And I think that's part of why it's important as a village to take the time, like tonight, to slow down. And one of the things that we did in this past year was through the Veterans Blue Ribbon Commission. Jim Husel was the head of that, is the head of that, and provided opportunities to recognize 24 veterans that, as you went down Old Plain Road, you saw banners with their faces and what they were, what their particular armed force was. And it was a great opportunity when they came in on Veterans Day to be able to see the faces of, in some cases, the moms and dads of the veterans that have been lost, and for the veterans themselves. And we are committed to doing this every year hereafter, and really just wanting to spend the time to say thank you. And it's we want to go beyond that, and I think that's the point of the commission, is that thank you is good, thank you for your service is good, but then it's like, what can we do for you? And there's some needs that they have that are different than others. Some of the numbers I've seen nationally are just horrific. That I see that there's veterans that commit suicide at the number of 21 a day. So in our community, you can imagine that that just happens, right? But that's not something that's advertised or you see out there. So my hope is that with the commission and with the group of veterans, they're going to be able to connect with something like that that I'd never be able to. And I'm thankful that they've taken the opportunity and have done that. There's other things, Teacher of the Year, that's near and dear to my heart. And as I mentioned, Don Henderson was a main proponent of that, providing the finances and the heart. Don passed away this past year at the ripe old age of 95. In many ways, he did things behind the scenes that we didn't know about. The police department might know that he came by and gave them a check around Christmas time, and the fire department asking where he could help out. He always was a part of the community and a great stepdad to me. So he'll be sorely lost. We'll keep Teacher of the Year going, and actually the school districts have asked to add Support Persons of the Year as well. So that they can be recognized. Because in our school districts, as they told me, half the people are support people, half the people are teachers. Now, that didn't cross my head, but it's like, shouldn't we recognize support people? And I think that'd be just a great idea. So we're gonna do that for the first time this year. Also Gilly, which is students, it's Gurnee Youth Leadership Initiative. Group of high school students came to me, actually That group. One, Bryson King, I met when he was a freshman at Warren High School. And he wanted to do more than just go to school. He wanted to have an impact on the community around him. And if you've ever met Bryson, you would immediately fall in love with him. His bright smile, contagious, just in so many ways. And he's in college right now, but at the end of the day, he still is committed to the village of Gurnee. His folks live here, and he still participates in things in the community and leading a group of high school students in the internship area. And in fact, Warren Township High School is starting an internship class beginning in the fall, for which Bryson and myself will be part of. And I'm thankful for Bryson for that. Let's see. And a couple working committees that I want to address and talk about is the Environmental Sustainability Committee. And I'm really thankful for Karen Thorstensen and her work with that. In some ways, it's unfortunate that it had to start out of ETO. In October of 2019, we found out that ETO existed. At least I didn't know about it, and I don't think much of anybody else did. And I think in realizing that, it was something that I wanted to start, is that we needed to be more proactive in the environment area. It's not that we were offenders of that knowing being offenders, but we needed to be more proactive, and that's what this committee has done, is that they've done a lot in the recycling area. They've gone out of their way to encourage our community to be more mindful of our environment, that we want to pass on a community to our future generations that's intact, that it's not destroyed. So I appreciate that. And again, I think some people would comment about me. They would say there isn't a committee. I think, Jeannie, you might lead the way. There isn't a committee that I don't like, right? So do we have to have so many? And frankly, my thought behind that is that environment's important to me, but at the end of the day, it'll move on to something else, and that'll take not a total back seat, but it'll be in the back seat. And that's what the Environmental Sustainability Committee, it's not in their back seat. It's something that they think about on a regular basis, and I appreciate that. Next is the East Side Commission. So I've had a lot of superlatives tonight, right? You've heard, how great Gurnee is and all those other things. Well, you have to have a rough spot to recognize how great you have it, and we had that this past year. It was rough, and for the village board, for our residents, in my time that I can recall, I can't remember an issue that came before the board where there were residents in the village of Gurnee on either side. Usually it's the residents against the big bad business, right? But in this case, that wasn't the case. For those that don't know, there was PADS wanted to locate an emergency shelter on Grand Avenue, just by Route 41 in the Fairbridge Hotel. And ultimately, the decision was made by the village board not to allow that to happen. And for East Side residents, those that came closer or nearby to this particular project, their comments to me and other people was, how could you possibly ever think that you'd want to put a place like this in our neighborhood? It's the worst possible decision you could ever make. And then on the other side of that, PAD supporters and those people that are looking at the homeless situation, they'd say just the opposite. How could you possibly not provide for the needs of our people that are in the neediest group, and how can you ignore their needs and make a decision that it's just easier for us to say not in our backyard? So you could see how that played out in a lot of ways. There were a lot of people saying hard things to each other. And from my perspective, looking to see, well, how are we going to come out of this? Whether it was for or against, we were going to have a group of citizens that didn't like the result. So from that came the East Side Commission. And the East Side Commission is something that is a group of residents that wanted to see some better things happen on the East Side. And we started that with an East Side get-together. It was food and music. And we've expanded from there, where this group of neighbors have provided a lot of input into staff and myself and the village board. And it's been excellent. It's been remarkable, I think, in many ways, because the village has a number of times, when I say East Side Gurnee, I'm speaking about the area east of Route 41, usually on Grand Avenue, or in that area. And what happened is that in 2004 and in 2016, plans were made for improvements to be done on the east side. And there were efforts were made, but it always seemed to fall short. And a lot of times we spent more time on our plans than we did on the implementation. And I wouldn't point the finger at anybody, it's just that's how it worked out. And this time, however, it was not a ton of plans on the front end, but there's a lot of things that we needed to improve, and we started to do them. And great credit to the village administrator and the police department and public works and to Ellen Dean, and people pitched in and the neighbors provided direction because we don't see it the same way that they do, right? I mean, when I go down a street, I see it a certain way. They live on that street. So they provided a lot of input that was really helpful, and it made a difference. And we're far from done, but there's been an attraction of new businesses. There's 3, 4 new businesses on the east side. There's more to come. There's an improvement on what it looks like. And it's just been enjoyable for me to see a good thing come out of a hard thing. And on the opposite side of that, and I'll talk a little bit about this, is the care commission that we're working on developing. And that is that recognizing that our residents, even in the village of Gurnee, there's lots of needs that we don't see. They're behind closed doors, whether it's, or no doors, right? Homelessness, no food, no coat, fill in the blank. You talk to the schools, usually that's where you'll find out the number of children that come to school on a regular basis that don't have any coats, that they don't eat over the weekend because they don't have any food. They can't wait to get to school to have their breakfast provided to them. Those are the people living in our community, and we're blind sometimes to that. And for me, again, it's the same thing, unless I have a group of people that look at that on a regular basis. And this is something that I've asked Kevin Woodside to chair, to be in charge of, to be able to lead people, to coordinate our nonprofits. That seems to be an issue, is that our nonprofits do a good job, but in specific areas, and sometimes they don't do such a good job in communicating with each other. So we're looking for that to improve for the benefit of our Gurnee residents. And it's a lot of times, like I said, it's not having clothing, not having food. Some of the basic things that we just assume we're going to have ourselves, but there's people in our neighborhoods that don't have that. We have seniors in our neighborhoods that are living on $1,000 a month, and they don't know how they're going to make it. Those are the people that we need to reach out to. And that's something that came out of the issue with pads and Fairbridge. It's bringing attention to something that previously wasn't brought attention to. So there's still some healing that needs to be done, but I'm hopeful. So the next is the police department. We've already talked about them a number of times. There's just a number of improvements that have happened over this past year. We've added a commander, a couple of officers, SRO. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. That's really important to me. And you can see all the different things that have been added. And at the bottom, and I'll lean into this also in a little bit, is that the citizen and youth police academies that occur, bringing residents in to see the work that the police department does up close and personal. It's really a pleasure to see, again, dedicated police officers that really want to tell you about their craft, and it is a craft. So SROs, I want to just stop here for a moment. An SRO is a special resource officer. This past year we added another one, and I could just tell you that the numbers would rock you to know that in this past year, in 2024, there were 39 school shootings across the country. And I won't say or can't say that it won't happen in our schools, but what I can say is that we're going to do our very best, that when we are challenged, that we're going to be able to say that we made an effort, we planned, the police department's interacted with the schools, they've invited us in to be able to teach them, to train them, to be ready. That's what the lockdown drills are about, explaining many of the things that would make us ready so that is less likely to happen. And to me, on my watch and on the village's watch, I want to be able to say that our schools are safe and that I'm not concerned about that at night. When I go to sleep at night, I'm not thinking about whether our schools are going to be safe the following day. And I'm thankful that for the steps that our schools have taken, but especially for the police department and all that they've provided. The bottom thing is that policing is a lot different than it used to be probably 50 years ago, and that's that it's customer service is a lot of what it's all about. And I'm thankful for the men and women that are part of our police department that are involved in all these community events and outreaches. And you can see the list there. Probably my favorite is Outrun the Cop. Is that pretty good, right? So in any event, it's something that they get out. And I really enjoy the canines, the dogs really draw out the kids in terms of seeing them out in the parks and seeing other things and being able to interact with the police officers. And they can see that they're a real person, that they have a life, they have children, they have dogs, it's just a lot easier for children and adults to be able to relate to a police officer, because oftentimes when you meet a police officer, sometimes it's going to be your very worst moment. And I say that about the fire department too for our residents, is that when you meet our staff, that you're not always in your best circumstances. And our police officers have been, and the fire department have been specially trained to be able to meet with those circumstances, to be able to handle them correctly, to be able to be trained, to have the right equipment and the right facilities. And our village board makes sure that they're properly funded to make sure that happens. Next is the fire department. Who doesn't like a fireman, right, John? That's always the caricature, I suppose. And what I'm just proud of, I mean, numbers speak a lot, I suppose, is that, believe it or not, that our fire department last year had over 8,000 calls. That is a lot. To be able to be out in town that many times and servicing people that are in need, more than almost 4,000 inspections, that there's been a lot going on in town. And we're always working at keeping up with new equipment. That's something that you can see that we provided some new equipment this past year, that there's been an investment in working with the businesses for fire alarm monitoring. There's always something that we need to pay attention to. The one thing in particular I want to talk to about the fire department, and this stretches across the fire and the police, is Lake Com. And this is what I talked about a little bit earlier. This is in Lake County, this coming summer, we're going to see a consolidation of our 911 centers. And not everybody, but a lot of entities, 30. In that area will be consolidating. And the main purpose is that our transfer of calls, oftentimes when you call to a certain location, they might have to transfer your emergency call to another location. So whatever amount of time that takes, maybe it's 10 seconds, maybe it's 30 seconds, whatever it is, it's too many seconds when your husband is having a heart attack or when your wife's out of breath, fill in the blank, that we're willing to invest whatever we need to invest to see this happen. And that's what's happened in the village of Gurnee. Staff has invested in an inordinate amount of time to make sure this works. And again, to thank Lake County through Carissa and Sandy and the rest of the board members that have provided us with this opportunity. We're going to have to pay for it, right? That's going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's something we couldn't have done by ourselves. Our dispatch center was awesome. They do a great job. But at the end of the day, those transfer calls still happen. So it'll save us some money by having it with Lake County, but at the end of the day, the main reason is to reduce the amount of time for the transfer of calls. And certainly the fire department does many of the things that the police department does, and they're probably more huggable than the policemen since they don't have all that gear on them. But in any event, they spend a lot of time out there meeting the residents and explaining their equipment to them, and what child doesn't like to shoot off a fire hose or take a look at that ladder up in the sky. And then the last department is Public Works, Engineering, Community Development, and as Heather would testify, it's like, well, we never get noticed, right? Well, actually, they do get noticed. When something doesn't work, they'll get noticed right away. But when everything works right, they're noticed. And that's when you take a look at all the things that they've been involved in. And when I was talking about water early, they're right in the middle of that. They keep our roadways clear. They are, through our engineering, provide our roadways to make them up to date. To keep them in a place where something you just don't notice unless it's in poor condition. And in the village of Gurnee, that's pretty unusual. Then I'm proud of the fact that during this last year, we had the most miles of road ever redone in the history of Gurnee, 7.6 miles. And just to put that in context, we need to do approximately 6 miles of road every year in order to keep our roads at the standard in which they're at. If we do a little bit more, then that's our benefit, right? So we're invested in doing not only above ground, but the below ground is important as well, replacing pipes that have been there in some cases for 20, 30 years. Something we don't notice until the pipe busts in the middle of the winter, and then that's noticeable for all of us. So they do some awesome things. Sidewalks, actually that's probably one of the leading things that I hear residents talk to me about is walkability. And that's something that they're committed to do, is to make sure our sidewalks are usable and to expand. So finally, let's see, I'm at an hour. That's a little long, right? So what is next for Gurnee? There's a couple things that are top of my list. And more of a surprise to me, and that's the Arts Commission. Another committee that I couldn't do without, right? So in February, we're going to have an Arts Commission that will be made up with the purpose of forming more arts, encouraging the arts in the village of Gurnee, whether it's in performing arts or whether it's fill in the blank, painting, ceramics. I'm not an artist, and you can tell that, right? You wouldn't want me anywhere near the Arts Commission other than to start it, right? So, but in any event, we've already had a lot of interest in it. And again, it's something that came out of that Fairbridge Pads thing, is that there was an interest in having some arts come on the east side to make that a type of arts district. And from there, there's been a growing interest, obviously, not just to keep it on the east side, but to spread it across all of Gurnee. There will be, and I've already mentioned this, the Care Commission I mentioned, the east side improvements that we're working on, increased mobility. I've stole all my thunder here, right? It's like I think all the way through is that we continue to develop businesses and have more exciting announcements in 2025. And I know some of the exciting announcements in 2025, but it's one of those things, I just can't say it. It's just they'd be really angry at me, wouldn't they? So in any event, there's just some really fun things that fun to see new businesses come into town and see some of the excitement that our residents have. Even at Texas Roadhouse, you wouldn't think it, just the amount of interaction I've had with people over that has been really fun to see new things come into town. And so I say all that to say that Gurnee's strength comes from its people, residents, businesses, organizations who care deeply about our community. And it's our future together. We've achieved so much, and together we'll continue to make Gurnee a place that we all want to live. And I pray that God's hand continues to be on our village, that make no mistake, it's not an accident that we live in a community like we do, because there's so many people that live in other communities that don't experience what we do, like I said in the start. And I pray that He'd continue to prosper us, that we'd remain thankful, and that we'd continue to be strong, safe, and be together. So have a good evening.